Was popping, everyone? The Kid is back with another video for y'all. I'm getting a lot of questions about what the best settings in Cold War are. So, as always, I decided to make a video on it. It is for PC, though. I know PC has more options compared to the console. At least I believe so. I haven't played Cold War on PS5 or the new Xbox, but these settings will help you out. I kind of give you guys an in-depth rundown of what you need to have disabled, what you can kind of tune depending on how good your PC is. Also, I dive into the controller settings and everything else. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let the kid know what you want to see in the future. But that's it. I'm going to get right into the video so y'all don't have to hear me rambling. Peace. Getting right into the settings, guys, we're going to go ahead and go over to the graphics. I can't help you if you're on keyboard and mouse because I do play on controller. As you can see, that's my input device. But so we're going to go to the graphics. First up, display mode. You're going to want to make sure it's on full screen, not windowed full screen, definitely not multi-monitor. So you're going to want it on full screen. And then scroll on down to the refresh rate. Now, this is another key option. So a lot of people will be playing on 60 Hertz, even though they have a monitor that supports higher refresh rate. So make sure you know what your refresh rate is on your monitor. You can look at that on your PC as well. Make sure they're both lined up correctly. I have 144 Hertz, so that's what I play on. Obviously, you can have a 240. You know, you might only have a 60, but just make sure that this is correct. Gameplay VSync, menu VSync, and NVIDIA Reflex low latency, you all want off, guys. You all want disabled. You do not want any VSync. I'm telling you, it's going to cause issues, performance issues. There could be screen tearing, etc., etc. For the render resolution, make sure this is obviously 100 on whatever resolution you're playing on. I'm on 1920 by 1080, as you can see. Well, scrolled by it, but yeah, I mean, obviously, if you play on a higher one, then you're not going to want to be on 1920 by 1080. But that's what I'm on. The aspect ratio, we keep it simple, automatic. Moving on down to the display section, guys. For field of view, this is pretty much preference, right? I would say anywhere from 100 to 110 is probably the best. I like to play on, like, I go back and forth. I'll be on like 103, 105, but it's all preference. You know, do use trial and error, see what you like best, but I would say anywhere from 100 to 110 is the best. If you guys don't have the ADS field of view on affected, switch now. As you can see in the description, independent is aiming down sights will zoom the field of view to its intended value, whereas affected, aiming down sights will zoom to a value closer to your field of view setting. So what that means basically is if you're on independent, it's going to go to its intended value no matter what, but it doesn't take into account that you could be on 80 FOV or you could be on 120. It also, for some reason, I don't know why, but a visual thing, it seems like your guns have less recoil when you're on affected. So I would suggest making the switch on that. You guys can let me know in the comment section below if you don't like it, if you do like it. I think you personally all will. Brightness, this is obviously, you know, this is up to you and your monitor and what you like. You know, you can go higher, lower. I personally play on 43, but it's not that big of a deal. The frame rate limit, guys, I go back and forth on this. I actually don't know why, because custom is better in my opinion. So for my gameplay custom frame limit, I obviously have 250 because max, I only get like 240 anyways. And then you have the option in the menu and when the game is minimized to put it on whatever you want. I obviously have 60 frames just so it's not stressing the hell out of my computer. You know, I don't need 250 frames. It doesn't need to be unlimited in the menu, or if I don't have the game up, if it's minimized. So definitely I would say do that. Now for the gameplay custom frame rate limit, yours might not be 250. You know, I don't know what your max frames are necessarily, so depending on what that is, you could tweak around that number. And then guys, this is where it really comes down to how good your PC is. So as you can see in the bottom right hand of the screen, the VRAM usage, you see I have a max of 11,048 megabytes, and right now I'm only using 3,323. So if you have a beast computer, you can play with some of these details and textures on high, like texture quality, model quality. If you don't though, you're gonna want to bump it down to low. You see the difference in that? I literally save, it goes from 3,323 megabytes all the way down to 2,427. Jesus Christ, I almost can't talk. So if you don't have the best computer, if it's kind of like a mid-grade computer, I would suggest putting all of these details and textures on low. It obviously makes the game look a little bit prettier if you have them on high, but you don't want to stress your computer and take away frames from the game, because performance is the most important thing. So obviously, like you see, I have some of these on high and low. This all comes down to your PC. So once again, if you see that you're close to the max on the bottom right bar, you probably are way too high on some of these details and textures, and you're going to want to lower them. Moving on to the shadow and lighting, it's the same concept here, guys. Even though some of these options aren't as important as the details and textures when it comes to performance, you just tweak around until you're maintaining a good amount of frames and these graphic settings aren't taking away any extra frames you could be getting. So like I said, I have mine on high, but you probably want them on low. For most of you guys out there, you want the dynamic shadows and special effect shadows disabled. Trust, you don't need that, and the weapon shadow. Moving on to the ray tracing, turn all this off. You don't want nothing enabled. The sun shadows, the local shadows, the ambient occlusion, disable all of them. You'll thank me later. Now moving over to the post processing effects. I think when you get the game, it starts on, whatever it might be, balance, performance, whatever. Disable this. Trust me, disable this. You do not want NVIDIA DLSS enabled at all. And then this one is big, guys. This is probably one of the most important settings, especially when it comes to how much it's going to affect your frames that you get. So for the anti-aliasing quality, I have mine on ultra, right? As you can see on the right hand side, lowest is FXAA, lowest SMAA1X, and it keeps going up. I can afford to have this on ultra. I can. Now, once again, if you have not the best PC, you're probably going to want to turn this off. You're probably going to want to disable it. It's going to make the game feel and look a little bit sharper. Obviously not as detailed, not as textured, but you're going to save a lot of frames here. So you can mess around with it. Maybe you are getting a good amount of frames and you don't like having it disabled. You could try lowest, you could work your way up, then go to low, then go to medium. I personally play on ultra just because I like how the game looks and I have the computer built for it. Moving on to the ambient occlusion quality. I hope I pronounced that one right. This is kind of the same thing. I have mine on ultra, but you guys can go as far as disabling it. You can see in the description, it says create soft shadow that can intersect with each other. It's not that big a deal. Honestly, I don't even know if I could tell half the damn time. So you mess around anywhere between disabled and ultra. Probably want it disabled or low for both of these, and you definitely want the DLSS disabled. Motion blur, I should not need to inform you guys. You want this off, disabled. Motion blur quality, I don't think this matters because it is disabled, but I have mine on low. The subsurface scattering, this one can be disabled. I don't know how much effect, if any, it has on your VRAM usage, but from the pictures and description, you can't really tell a difference. So order independent transparency though, you definitely want this disabled. You can see how it says effect on VRAM high. Description is higher quality will increase the amount of transparent effects and objects that are sorted when looking through them. This helps to get a good feeling of depth when looking through these objects. Well, I mean, that's pretty cool. But as you can see, if I have it on high, it goes all the way up to 3,409 megabytes, where I have mine disabled, and I save about 300 megabytes. It's just not that worth, it's not worth it. You don't need that, trust me. Then for the advanced settings, guys, I have the VRAM usage target at default, which is 80%. If you want it to be a little bit less depending on your PC, you can bump that down to low, or you can do high if your PC is optimal, for Cold War, but just leave it on default if I'm being honest with you guys. Then the display gamma, guys, I have mine on computer RGB. I think this is preference, to be honest. I just like how the RGB looks compared to the 709 to HDTV. I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but that is all the graphics settings. Moving over to the audio, this is pretty quick, guys. Honestly, only thing I really want to touch on here is the audio presets. I've been messing around between flat and super bass boost. I kind of really like flat for me, and this could be completely accidental. This might not even make sense, but I feel like I have a better time hearing footsteps when I'm on flat and those smaller sounds compared to having it on any one of the other audio presets. So that's all I have. For the interface, guys, I would suggest that you turn on everything in the, well, not everything, but you want to have the FPS counter, GPU temperature. I mean, you can have them all on if you want, but FPS counter is obviously most important. You want to know how many frames you are getting per second, and you want to know how hot your GPU is. So I think both of those are a necessity, and that's also so how you can get a good gauge on what settings you should be running by having these frames per second setting up, to having the counter set up so you can, tweak what you need to tweak. Moving on to the last settings part, guys, is the controller. Nothing really special here. Most of it's preference. As you can see, I play on 661. I do play on default. I do play with my controller flip, so I shoot with the bumpers, throw my attacks and my nades with the triggers. But there is one thing that I want to touch on, and that is the aim response curve type. Cold War just added this recently, guys. If you are on standard, I would recommend trying dynamic. In the description, it says reverse S-curve mapping for fine aim rate control, faster initial response that smooths out with higher stick deflection. Now, that sounds like a whole lot of baloney, right? I don't know what that means, but I will tell you this: almost all of the pros in MW and all the pros in this game are using dynamic. Give it a try, guys. Play with this for a day or two. I'm telling you, you will enjoy it, and you will feel a lot more comfortable while you're aiming compared to standard. You definitely don't want linear. Standard, you can, if you're comfortable with standard, you can rock with standard, but I would choose dynamic or standard. Definitely not linear. I lean towards dynamic, but at the end of the day, it is all preference. For the gameplay, you want the aim down sight aim assist enabled. Obviously, you want the slow down strafing aim assist enabled, obviously. And then everything else, guys, is pretty much preference. The last thing that I will touch on, though, in the advanced part of the controller settings. So I believe when you first start, the standard option is 20 for the left and right stick minimum input threshold. Now, if you guys do not have a controller with stick drift, or even if you do, but it might not be that bad, you need to test this out. Okay, so you see how I'm on 5.5. Basically, you want to see how low your controller input threshold can be without seeing any noticeable stick drift. Okay, because if you're at 20 compared to 5, it's going to feel a lot more sluggish while you're moving your analog stick, because it adjusts the inner range of the right stick and the left stick inputs. So you can see in the description, increase the value to prevent stick drifting, but they put it pretty high at 20. And for me, it feels like I'm literally looking in quicksand. Okay, I moved mine down to 5. I personally think that is the sweet spot for me. Yours might be 8, yours might be 3, yours might be 12, but that's for you to find out. You can go into a custom game and just test it out, barely tap on your analog sticks, and you will get a good feel for what works best for you. but definitely test it. Don't leave it on 20 unless you need to. But guys, that is enough for the settings. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section below if you're going to use any of these settings. Let me know if these settings are absolutely ass. Let me know what you want to see from me in the future. Thank you so much. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The kid is out of here.